Hello and welcome to episode 300 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. And join me as always is the glorious League Freak. You can also find on Twitter at League Freak. How you going there, mate?
Going very well. How cool is it? We've done 300 of these now.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. And can I just say, we might need to change the intro to the podcast from now on in and call it Welcome to the Podcast, where you get the news before it becomes the news.
Oh, yeah, because all of the, it felt like all the stories last week that come out into the media, we had talked about in like the previous few days. And so I think we've become influencers now.
Definitely. Yeah. Social media influencers. We're now not just a social media influencers, we're now news influencers.
Yeah, 100%. And it's fair enough too, because like, I mean, I don't want to talk us up, right? But I think we're the moral guiding light of the entire sport.
Esteemed.
Yeah.
Esteemed. And look, just to show people that we're not bullshitting, okay? What was the first one was... Oh, yeah, that's right. After 2 episodes we had, I think there was the one called Angry and another one called The West Tigers, The Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
Yes.
Where it was pretty clear I was taking the stance that it's not the coach that's at fault here at the West Tigers. There's a lot of other people.
Yeah.
All admin people, backroom people, all those sort of guys. We had newspaper articles at the Channel 9 website, Sydney Morning Herald, and the Daily Telegraph all barking exactly the same tune.
Yeah.
Just by coincidence.
Yeah.
All on the same day.
Yeah. And there was also somebody made up a petition for Justin Pascoe to stand down as well the next day. So definitely world leaders in that regard. And then that was followed up by extraordinary. Somebody registered Western Quackers as a potential NRL club name. And like we've been pushing that for a year at least.
Yeah. That was mind blowing, that was.
Yeah. That was very cool. I wonder if we would sell madquackers.com to whoever it is. I don't know who it is, as long as their last name's not Elias. And they can buy it. What would we say, $1 million? Madquackers.com?
I'd say $1 million, but if it's Benny Elias asking, then it's 4.7 billion.
I agree. I
fuck
agree
that guy.
Completely with that. Hey, did you? That reminds me. I saw some news during the week where a Benny Elias-led consortium offered to buy the West Tigers, and the West Tigers, I think it was the West Ashfield side, was like, no, thank you. And
yeah,
I thought
West Ashfield's got a lot of very intelligent businessmen, so they know shit when they see it and smell it.
Well, I just thought it would be so. I like, and I'm sorry about this, but so fucking hilarious if your club was owned by Benny Elias.
That would be the most ultimate West Tigers move ever.
I reckon. It'd be like if fucking Matthew Elliott led a consortium to buy the Penrith Panthers. It'd just be the nightmare.
Tell you what, this is what would happen, okay, if Benny bought the West Tigers. They would still play 3 games at Campbelltown, 3 games at Leichhardt, 3 games at Bankwest, 3 games at Perth, and a few other games elsewhere. Wherever they can. They wouldn't be based anywhere. It'd be a complete fucking balls up. And then he'd eventually run them in the ground and then charge him a fee for it so that he could keep making money on the side from it while it died.
Sounds about right, but yeah, I thought that was funny.
It was very funny. Now, the other one was something that we spoke about a long time ago. And Nadine raised this with us, and that was about every NRL club being assigned to a certain country area.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. And, man, I mean, far out. We must have been talking about that. We might have even talked about that in the first episode we did. Like, we talked about that for a very long time.
Yeah. That was well over a year ago.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was one that I'd forgotten about too, hey?
Yeah, so, you want to hear the news before it comes news? You got to tune in here.
It's because every single last one of our ideas are gold.
Yeah. That can't be disputed. I'm waiting for the article about an expansion team in Hawaii.
It'll happen. You watch.
Yeah. Just wait until they catch up on, because obviously they're working backwards with our catalogue, so
yeah,
give them a few more weeks.
When was the Hawaii? I feel like the Hawaii one.
That was episode 1.
Oh, was it episode 1? Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, tail end of episode 1, so they've got to go all the way back. That's going to take a while. But, it's not like they've got anything else important to do.
True. It's between that and I guess they watch horse races and that's it, really.
They compile information solely on all of the players who the West Tigers have let go. And just at the end of every NRL season, they just update that list.
Yeah.
They don't do it for any other club. No other club has juniors come through who they let go or has star players who they let go early or anything like that. No other club does this. It's only the West Tigers, apparently.
At least just got a win today.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw the last 3.5 minutes because I figured that was the only bit that needs to be sat through.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting a much worse result. Obviously, I had a lot of other personal matters to attend to other than the football today, so that was the main reason why I didn't get to do that. So I have set it aside to watch it tomorrow.
Yeah. So
I can have a bit of a better view of what went on. So, I made no comment today other than I think one tweet where I said, so this game just now was the grand final, right, for 2021, yeah? Yeah? That was it. And I've got people saying, are you serious, man? Are you drunk? I was sitting there going, go on. How fucking obviously of a joke does that need to be?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's kind of depressing when you'll say something. Like I said today on Twitter, like I said, I tipped the Warriors and the Dragons, and I'm not confident, but we'll see what happens. And I had a couple of people say, oh, thanks, Captain Obvious. And I was like, what did I tweet wrong? It was just what I think. And apparently because they were both favourites, I shouldn't have tweeted it, but like one of them lost. And that's the whole point of let's see what happens. It's just weird.
Man, you can't go around doing that. No journo can fucking rip that off and make it a news story of their own. It's too obvious. I need to mix it up.
I had someone that was upset with me today, and they said something along the lines of like, they tweeted me a couple of times that it was like, why would somebody join up to my Patreon? Because I don't actually do anything for rugby league, unlike Andrew Ferguson. And I felt like, damn it, don't bring real stuff into this. Don't bring reality into what we're doing on here.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
So vicious on there.
I know. It's just like, just chill, man.
Yeah. I hope one bloke wouldn't have an argument with me because I called one of the Daily Journo lackeys Murdoch lackey.
Really? And they argued about that?
Yeah, saying, Murdoch doesn't care what goes on in NRL, and I didn't say he did.
No, they're just lackeys of his.
Yeah, which is my point. But there you go. It's they're weird. It was good to get the Twitter beef out of the way early.
Yeah.
That must be a section every week now.
I know, right? Although I did have some really good conversations this weekend about footy. I actually had a really good conversation with a Bulldogs fan about a subject I'm going to talk about in the next episode with a special guest.
Very nice.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
Big week of sporting news.
Yeah.
We won't go to the games like we did last time, but we'll just have a quick look at some of the big things that happened.
Yeah.
We'll go to you because you've done the prep work this time around.
Yeah, I didn't want the interns to do it this time. I was going to do it myself. There was a little bit of news I heard on the radio today that apparently, remember DCE was being sounded out supposedly by the Brisbane Broncos to go up there. Well, a week later, it turns out that DCE and the Manly Seagulls are in talks to extend his stay at the Manly Seagulls. So that's an interesting one. I think it's a smart move by DCE because it's it's very much a players and a halfbacks market right now with all the halfbacks that are moving around. And if he can squeeze a bit more money out of the Manly Seagulls for a little bit longer, that's a good move for him. So there was that news that come out today. What do you reckon? Do you reckon Manly... I mean, I think Manly would be absolutely stupid to let him go. But I could see where DCE sort of looks at his career and says, I don't know whether I want to stay here.
Yeah, look, I don't know. Something about me says I can't see him going to another club. Because I don't know that Manly's got someone that is ready to jump straight into that number 7 jumper right now. No. And that's what they're going to need if they're getting rid of DCE. Kate Custer's there, but I don't think he's ready to take on that job. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's enough supporting people at the club in the spine to help a rookie half step up after DC's been there, because DC runs an awful lot of their attack.
Yeah, he carries them a lot.
Yeah. So they're going to need 2 genuine halves who can, direct the team around the field. So I suppose they could probably afford to do that if they keep Cust and they use the money left over to buy a genuine 5'8" who can control the side. Who that is, I don't know. Maybe Sean Johnson. I don't know if that's a good move or not, but it's going to have to be someone like that. It's going to have to be an experienced head. So I don't know who they go with there, but I think it's in the best interest of both parties there that DC stays until he retires there, or until they find someone better.
For sure. Just thinking about it, and what clubs will have the sort of money that they could attract a DCE to the club, and who could really use someone like him?
Broncos.
Well, the Broncos definitely, right? Although the Broncos are weird. The Broncos decided that they didn't want to hold on to a young halfback, and so they let him go, and they don't want to hold on to their experienced players either, so they let them go. But
well, that's because the Broncos want success and everything now.
Yeah.
So they don't know how to do a rebuild, and they don't know how to, they don't know how to cope with failure. So they need to get out of their hole as quickly as possible. So I don't know why they ditched Dearden. He's a top player, and I think the Cowboys have done a very astute thing by picking him up. It does mean that the Broncos are now stuck in a situation where they've got Milford and Croft there, and neither of them should be. So I think they would probably go and chase an established halfback in the hope that it would lead them to success sooner rather than later, and hope that buys them enough time to get a young halfback to come in. I think it's a stupid way to go about righting some wrongs, especially when you've got a young half there ready to go and he's already got first grade experience. That's your starting point, and they threw their starting point away.
Yeah. It is a weird one. And after letting Fafita walk as well, you think that would have been the sort of moment for the club where they're like, oh, we can't let that happen again, and they let it happen immediately. I'm not saying that Dearden's as good as Fafita, but if you're going to produce them, hold on to them. But who could really use DCA and he would make a really big impact? And it's the team that he was supposed to go to, is the Gold Coast Titans. So if you imagine if they swapped DCE for what's his name, the overpriced one that they've got,
Ash Taylor.
Ash Taylor, yeah, because they'd be about on $1 million each. So if they got rid of Ash Taylor and offered that to DCE at the Gold Coast Titans makes them a bloody good side next year. But looks like it's going to stay.
I think given the way the Broncos have been signing players and not signing players of late, I think their form suggests that they will sign Ash Taylor for $1 million.
You know what? Did I tweet that?
I don't know.
I don't know if I tweeted it, but I thought the exact same thing.
It just seems to be their form line at the moment. I reckon if Ash Taylor's smart, he just needs to play the back end of this season the best he ever has. Broncos will pick him up for the same price he's currently on. Maybe a little bit less, but not by too much.
Yeah. When I was watching that game and it was such a weird game where the Titans looked like they were going to score 80 points on the Broncos. And I was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking it would be the most Broncos thing at the moment to sign Ash Taylor and build it up as like, we brought one of our boys back. And it's like, yeah, you don't want to bring him back.
Yeah, that just seems like something they would definitely do right now. So,
definitely.
And this is the thing is, I think the other thing we're seeing that was interesting this weekend is some teams celebrating like they've just had, one of their biggest wins in their entire club's history. And all they did was beat another team at their same level or slightly better. So the Broncos carried on like they just won a grand final by beating the Titans.
Yeah.
And the Tigers celebrating like they won a finals match and they beat the Dragons.
I'll tell you the other one that was along those lines, when the Canberra Raiders lost, and I saw a number of people saying, well, it looks like the Canberra Raiders are no longer part of the big six at the top of the competition. And you look where they sit in the ladder, and it's like, you're not even in the top 8. What are you talking about?
It's interesting. And look, I'm not mocking those teams for celebrating the way they did, because obviously they're at a point in their season where any success is going to be very much welcomed and hard earned. But yeah, it's something I didn't think you'd be seeing as early as round 8.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, you go back a week ago, we had a team that won their first game of the season and their coach is crying on the sideline.
Yeah.
And even then you go back to last year where the Broncos lost a game and their players were crying on the field. It's like, what's going on? Why is everyone so emotional? Like, I'm not a big fan of emotions, Andrew.
You're a cold-hearted prick.
Well, I just think everyone should be dead inside like me, that's all.
Yeah, fair call.
Speaking of being dead inside, former...
I'm hanging very, 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 very closely on every word for this next segue.
Former New Zealand Warriors winger Manu Vatuvai has revealed that he is up on charges of... I just want to get this right. He's charged with possession, supply, and importing a Class A drug into New Zealand, which was methamphetamine. Now, this was information that was suppressed in the media. I guess he's been fighting to keep it suppressed. But he came out on his Instagram and basically said, in 2019, I was charged with importation, possession, and supply of methamphetamines. All these charges are accusations. I will be fighting my innocence for these charges. I know there'll be a lot of questions, but I've been advised by my legal team that that's all I can talk about. So he just wanted to get out ahead of when it all becomes public, because in the next few days he will be facing those charges in court. And, man, he faces life in jail if he's convicted.
Didn't he have a serious injury? Like serious, near life-threatening one, which forced him out of the game?
Oh, I don't know if it was life-threatening, but I feel like I remember a real serious one.
And it ended his career.
Yeah, I feel like it was a career ender. What was it?
Because it was one who was at Salford.
I just can't remember what it was. So I'd look it up.
No,
but
I'm having a look now, but I can't find anything there. I'm sure he had some sort of injury which stopped him from playing, because his career at Salford, I thought from memory he signed a 3-year deal there and he didn't even finish the season.
It wasn't something weird like he got deep vein thrombosis or something like that, was it?
Some sort of injury that forced him out.
Yeah, it was something strange. Anyway, so he's come out and he's basically talked about that on his Instagram as much as he can anyway. So, I mean, man, that's very serious, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, look, all I suggest is maybe get in touch with Michael Gordon. He's probably knows some legal people who might be able to help.
Have a talk about it over a coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the great issues in the world are solved over Michael Gordon's coffees.
It's the best pick-me-up you've ever had.
Do you reckon he would be world famous if he moved his coffees to Melbourne?
That's a good point. I mean, Melbourne's really well known across the entire planet for its coffee. I know that people in Italy, they sip their coffees and they say, it's not the quality you get in Melbourne, you know. I don't know why they talk like the Count, but anyway.
You beat me to it. One a coffee, two a coffee. Three a coffee.
Oh shit!
I could drink these fucking coffees all day. Yeah.
We're adults, man.
Bullshit. Who said that?
So, speaking of adults being silly, Matthew Johns has revealed that him and his brother Andrew are looking to coach the Samoan Rugby League team with Sonny Bill Williams in a triumvirate of just genius that would take over from the current coach. There was a really good quote in this article. Apparently he revealed this on his show, the Matty John Show. I don't watch the Matty John Show.
No, neither do I.
So he said, this is one of the quotes he said, "We've got full-time jobs, so I don't know how it would work out. And Joey has been talking to Sonny Bill Williams as well. We would do it for nothing, quite seriously. And Joey is the same. You wouldn't take a cent. Sonny wouldn't. It would be a bit of a three-way coaching. I don't know how it would work, but in my opinion, Samoa should be emulating what Tonga's doing." So these...
Well, he said one thing right there, and that's the last thing.
Yeah, they should be emulating what Tonga's doing.
Yeah.
But I like that these three got together. They said, let's coach Samoa if we can. We don't know how it's going to work or what the fuck we would do, but let's just try and coach Samoa anyway. That's a plan if ever I've heard one.
Yeah, like they've sat down over one of Michael Gordon's coffees and went, okay, we've got an idea. Let's coach an international team. Yeah. No. Don't ask any questions. That's the end of the brainstorming session. And let's go to the media with it and see what happens.
Yeah. We're all going to coach Samoa. Don't even know if I can get time off work to do it, but there's going to be three of us. But no one's going to be in charge, and we don't know what we're going to do or how we're going to do it. But let's do it. And look, Matt Parrish needs to be turfed as a Samoan coach. His results as a Samoan coach are abysmal, and they have been for years. He's terrible. But to have... I mean, first of all, we invoke the Johns clause, which is if a Johns brother suggests something, you do not do it under any circumstances. So that should be the end of this, really.
Yeah, I think maybe they're just mates with Matt Parrish, and this is a way of making sure Parrish keeps his job.
Imagine that.
That'd be the first time they've done something genuinely intelligent.
It would be sad for Samoan Rugby League. They really need...
It's a sad result either way for Samoa, if that's their options.
The crazy thing is, like, people are going to listen to these idiots, and they're going to be like, that's a great idea. Imagine all that experience, and it's like, please stop. Like, I saw somebody saying, you know what, Andrew Johns coaches most of the halves in the competition. But remember there was a point where he would go and he'd coach one team's halves and they'd get worse, and he'd coach another team's halves and they'd get worse. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and look, let's be clear, okay? There are a lot of players out there who are absolutely fantastic players that did not translate to being great coaches. Mm-hmm. And vice versa.
Yep.
You think of pretty much all of the great coaches we've got, and not many of them were world-class, best-ever players.
No.
Yeah, barely any of them. But you have a look at the likes of Wally Lewis. Just wasn't able to convert it into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different reasons for all of that. I think a lot of it is because as a player, they were seeing things before they happened, and that is a hard thing to try and teach to someone so that you can actually relate to them and teach them other things.
Mm-hmm.
You're teaching people who have got an inferior skill set to you. So that's a complicated matter for a lot of these coaches to get around. Former players.
Yeah, I also think there's an element of, if you are a truly great player, a lot of the things that make you great is just your instinct, and so you don't have to think about it. Where some coaches, you find they're very much players that had to think about the game, think about their game, think about what the team needed out of them, and they applied it to their game as a player, and then were able to apply it to other players when they went to the coaching ranks. And that's something that, I mean, you think of somebody like a Greg Inglis, who there is nobody that has maybe ever played the game who has ever been as effective on a rugby league field. But the things that Greg Inglis does on a football field, you can't teach that to someone, you know? Whereas if you're a player that has to have grafted and worked your ass off and, you know, scrambled to just be a first grade player, you can teach that to someone. And I think that there's an element of that in terms of when a great player can't turn into a very good coach.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. That's why you've got a lot of players out there who are, they're unable to make that transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a large reason why Andrew Johns has struggled to be genuinely successful as a coach. Not everything he's done as a coach has been rubbish. Same goes for Matty Johns, but he hasn't had the sort of strike rate that someone with his playing record has had. I think a lot of people automatically expect that he'd have the same sort of impact as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's a high bar to set, and so anytime that doesn't work out, it's sort of, rightly or wrongly, it sort of is a smear against his reputation as a coach, I guess. Matthew Johns, I think as a coach, Matthew Johns has probably had a little bit more success than Andrew, but all in all, I don't know that they've ever actually coached. Pretty certain they've never actually coached an actual team or assistant coached a team. They've just been doing one-on-one coaching lessons with halves, and there's a big fucking step up from there. Even when it's coaching, Samoa, or even if it's like Queensland, I suppose we only do it 3 times a year.
Yeah,
there's a lot more involved than just focusing on one player and focusing on little things they need to do and get that right. And throwing Sonny Bill in there, you've got a total of 3 coaches with a net total of 0 games of actually coaching a team between the 3 of them.
Yeah,
that's not exactly a recipe for success. I don't care who you are.
No, exactly. And like, you look at somebody like a Mal Meninga, who, as a club coach, his record wasn't fantastic, and
it was average.
Yeah, and then he becomes a representative coach after a pretty long coaching career in club level, and he finds his place in terms of, there are very few players in the game's history that, as a player, saw how you bring together a bunch of players from all over the place into a representative team, get them to gel very quickly, get them to perform at the highest level. Very few players have ever been in that situation more than Mal Meninga ever has. And Mal Meninga really showed that you've just got to bring that into the Origin arena, and now he does it in the Australian team as well. I always find it weird when people just decide to be coaches and they don't have a long history of coaching. It's just a little bit weird to me. We've seen it with Trent Barrett, where he just ordained himself as a coach for no real reason. And I think we're seeing the results of that. I always think the best coaches are the ones that you don't think about. Like, whoever thought Ivan Cleary would be a very good coach, or Craig Bellamy would be a very good coach. Like, it's the ones you're not thinking about that end up being the good coaches.
Yeah, I mean, even a winger like Wayne Bennett was. Who would have thought a winger would make a good coach?
Yeah.
Here we are. It's very interesting how that happens. And I think most of the first grade coaches we've got at the moment were not exactly outstanding players or even rep players.
Yeah.
I find that aspect quite fascinating. And given that it's happened an awful lot over history, there's got to be something to it. And I don't know, for people like Trent Barrett as well and the Johns brothers, sometimes they've just got to accept that their niche in the coaching world is as an assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of coaches out there who are very, very good assistant coaches. They're utterly garbage as a head coach. I mean, look at Jason Taylor. Classic example.
Mm-hmm.
Every club he's been to as assistant coach, he's been fantastic. Becomes a head coach, he's utter dross.
Yes.
Goes back to being assistant coach, fantastic. Even Trent Barrett to some extent had the same thing. Very good assistant coach.
The architect.
The architect. I take it as the architect, what he did was he provided the pencil.
Yeah.
You even of sharpen your pencil, mate.
It's just...
That was pretty much his level of architecture. But anyway, yeah, it's an interesting one. I'd seriously suggest that Samoa goes to these three men and says, thanks, but no thanks. And then if John Morris hasn't got a job, offer it to him.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. John Morris. Who else? Jeff Tuvey would be a good one, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I think Tuvey would be interesting too, because he does also have that experience of being in rep sides and knowing how they come together pretty quickly. So, but there's some weird decisions that international teams make in terms of who they're going to get as coach. Like, I remember the United States team brought in at one point, they were coached by Matthew Elliott, I believe, and then they were coached by Brian McDermott, and both of those guys know nothing about being coaches.
Who was the better coach out of those two, you reckon?
Oh, you know what? I would take Matthew Elliott for sure. Like, in fact, I would take Matthew Elliott. I would take Matthew Elliott to coach my club for 5 years over McDermott for half a season.
You heard it here first, Penrith fans.
Yeah, I tell you that, like, the Lebanon team is getting coached at the World Cup by a former rugby union coach.
Was that Eddie?
Nah, not Eddie McGuire. Eddie McGuire. Not Eddie Jones. What's his name?
I don't know.
He took over from Eddie Jones, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but, like, what the fuck are they doing?
We'll go with that bloke.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so a lot of them make weird decisions, and, you know, Sean Wayne, what's that going to do for England?
So I've made a mistake there because now I've called him that bloke. He's now going to turn up in every Matt Nable promo.
How about this bloke?
Check out that bloke. He's now a coach. Good on ya. Bloke.
Sad news today. Brett Morris died, apparently. Rest in peace.
Well, I miss this. Well, this is the thing that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's obviously horrible news. Brett Morris he's done a pretty serious knee injury.
Yeah, ACL. Done.
The media very quickly come out and say, oh, is this the end of his career? I think he's 35. We've seen quite a few players playing to their late 30s now.
Yep.
He's been in fucking stunning form this year.
Mm-hmm.
Why does this injury, which was him out for this year, automatically mean that his career's fucked?
Yeah, exactly. Like, say he was signed by, like, the Rabbitohs, for instance, for next season. I would be like, you know what? Not a bad signing. Gives them a bit of depth in the backs.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a guy that looks like his career is over.
No, he's definitely not making. I mean, he's scored 11 tries in 6 fucking games this year.
Yeah.
He's not making up the numbers.
I didn't get the mourning process over the last 24 hours. Like, yeah, I understand it's rotten. You don't want to see any player do a knee, but, man, it was like they instantly retired him. It was very strange.
Yeah, so I for one hope he doesn't bow to that sort of commentary and says, I'm not retiring.
Yeah.
I'm playing on. Because he's still got plenty to give. He's been stunning this year, and he doesn't look like he's lost any pace whatsoever. If he loses a little bit, he's still going to be pretty bloody sharp. He's still a stunning finisher.
I saw some people saying, and I heard this earlier in the year too, he is, and his brother, arguably the best wingers of all time.
Arguably?
Yes.
So we can argue it.
Well, that's what these people were saying.
That's the problem. That's the problem when the mourning process starts like this. Is you do get a little bit of exaggeration.
Yeah.
I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not playing him down. I'd put him very high up in my list of wingers of all time. I wouldn't say best of all time.
No. In fact, when I'm thinking of the best of all time, I'm not thinking of the Morris boys.
Well, the first few that come to mind are going to be Ken Irvine.
Yeah.
And it's such a great list. I can't remember his name. Bloke who went over to England for ages.
Brian Bevan.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's your starting point. You work back from there.
And, of current players, I think Josh Adokar, I think that if he went on to play until like he's 38 and he got the try scoring record, I could be like, yeah, he's the best winger of all time. Because I think he's the best winger I've ever seen in terms of, you don't have to worry about him defensively. In attack, he goes looking for the ball, but then you give him a little bit of space and he's gone. It's over.
Yeah, he's like Nathan Blacklock version 2.0.
Yeah, he's like Blacklock with way better defensively, and I think the Blacklock was fine defensively. I thought that was overrated. People saying his defense wasn't good, but he like Josh Adokar is just a fantastic defender, like a top class defender, and under the high ball and it's just an all round game for him. He's really the only winger. The only other one that I think could have done it was Israel Folau. If he had stayed in rugby league, I think he could have ended up being the best winger of all time, because he was doing amazing things on the wing.
Yeah, that's true. But it's horrible news what's happened there. I for one hope that Brett Morris returns to playing next year.
Same here.
Because I think he's still got plenty to give, and I still think he's NRL quality even after this injury. So don't hang up the boots, Brett.
No, play on.
Absolutely, play on.
There's a 3-year deal waiting for you at the West Tigers, son.
5.
Yeah. If somebody come to you and said, Brett Morris, 2-year contract after an ACL injury, would you say yes or no?
I would generally say no, because I'm sick of the Tigers signing backs.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Not our weak point. We need, you got to stop the fucking points being scored first before we start wondering about how you're going to score them.
True. He'd be good. Where he'd be good is Parramatta. That'd be a pretty handy signing for Parramatta.
Yeah, ditch Blake Ferguson, put him out there.
Yeah, definitely. Now, earlier in the week, there was talk that, and this is something we talked about as well a long time ago, that the NRL was looking to split all of its teams after expansion into conferences, and you would have a Sydney conference and you would have a non-Sydney conference, and basically the conferences would play everyone within their conference twice and everyone in the other conference once. So we would get cross-conference play.
Yeah.
And then we would have some sort of final system, which wasn't really talked about too much, but there was an idea that you would have a finals where they'd both play each other in maybe a Super Bowl style situation, or maybe you'd get the top, 4 from both conferences and throw them together into the one final system. That was more up in the air, but there are positives and negatives about conferences and how it'd all work. I don't think the game's ready for that. I don't think we've got nearly enough teams to need it.
I think the biggest issue for me with this, and it's the only glaring issue, is the fact that the Sydney conference will spend about $17 to be run, and the other conference will spend about $35 billion every year to be run.
Yeah.
Because with travel, And to me, that's what makes it completely illogical. It's going to force the teams outside the Sydney Conference to, especially some of the ones that are a distance away, Cowboys, Warriors, Canberra, Melbourne, any expansion teams, to probably end up eating each other in order to survive.
Yeah.
And then you'll end up with a conference that's going to be largely based in Brisbane and another one largely based in Sydney, and that, for me, is stupid.
Yeah, I agree. And as a follower of mine on Twitter called Tyrone pointed out last week when this was brought up, and he doesn't follow a Sydney club, and he's like, I love it when my teams play the Sydney teams. I wouldn't want to not play the Sydney teams as often. And I think people forget that sometimes, that I remember Gordon Tallis talking about the final series and when we used to have the semi-finals both in Sydney and the grand final in Sydney. And Gordon Tallis was like, as a Brisbane player, that's what they want. That feels like the big moment for them is when you go down to Sydney for a grand final. That's as much a part of their rugby league history as anything else. And I think people forget that sometimes, that, you know, we've got a lot of Sydney teams, but a lot of non-Sydney teams love playing the Sydney teams, and we should never lose track of that.
No, I agree. I think, for me, ultimately, you want to get to a situation where I think every team plays each other once, and then you have the finals.
Yeah.
And the way to get that is to have more teams in the comp.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that ultimately you have 24 teams and you end up playing 23 rounds, or 22 teams and you play 20 rounds, or whatever it is. That should be what you focus on. And whoever you played at home in year one, you go to their venue in year two, and you just keep alternating backwards and forwards. And that way, you can have exactly the same draw every single year. All you got to do is change around the venues. You can change the days a little bit there and there, here and there, but it would be so much easier for everyone.
It would be perfect, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. And to me, it just saves on a lot of administration, a lot of drama. Just everyone knows, okay, July 7 is when we play this team. Mm-hmm. It's like you make it a big deal.
Yeah, and then like even if you get to a point where you're playing a 25-round competition and you expand the competition by a couple more teams, playing 27 games, if you've got a league that big, it's not the end of the world either, You can work with that till you start getting up towards 30 games, and then you might have to sort something out. But, yeah, I agree with you. I think that would be perfect. Just play everyone once and you flip the home and away series the next year. Now, off the back of that talk about conferences, we're obviously getting a new team in Brisbane at some point. They're still talking about it. They love talking about it. But there was also talk that there's going to be a second team in New Zealand that will come in with the Brisbane team, or very soon after the Brisbane team. And it's interesting because Perth really seemed like a front runner for a long time, and Perth has come out recently, as we talked about, with the Perth Quokkas, or Western Quokkas, or whatever they're going to call themselves. We've got to wait and see, because we'll have to sue them for the Quokkas name eventually. But, a second New Zealand team, what do you think about that?
I'm not opposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't want it to be in a situation where it might cannibalise the Warriors either, and I don't know how you go about it, because historically we haven't had anywhere near the same volume of players coming from the South Island as we had from the North.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to be a North-based island. So maybe it's got to be down around the capital city. Maybe that can work, because then it's at either ends of the North Island. But still, I think they're going to end up fighting over the same sort of group of players eventually, because there's not that huge a gap from those two cities anyway. It's only a few hundred Ks. It's not that big a distance. And they're the only two teams there, so they're going to end up fighting over the same players at some point. So I don't know how they go about it. Mm-hmm. I'm not opposed to it, but yeah, the structure of those teams needs to be laid down pretty clear, and how they're not going to impact one another is, I think, vital. So they've got to be able to have a rivalry with the Warriors, but they can't be in a situation where they might be starting to impact on the Warriors' chance to survive as well. And they're going to have to at some point. The Warriors are going to have to give a little because they've got all of New Zealand themselves at the moment, so they've got to give a little. But you don't want to be taking too much from the Warriors where they start to become too weak and uncompetitive. So it's that final balancing act, which I'm hoping they consider when they put a team in Brisbane as well. That's my big concern, is that you take a team that's, got an entire city to itself, or the Warriors have got an entire country to themselves, and you put another team there, you're automatically halving the amount of players that they've got available to them, so the other team can survive. And that's a huge whack.
See, I take a different sort of look at it than you do. I think that it would be fantastic for the Warriors to have somebody in New Zealand that they've got to fight against in terms of how they do things, how they run their business, their coaching setup, their junior development system, and the juniors that they do target. Like, I don't know where the second New Zealand, and I think you could bring in a second New Zealand team next season and it would work to a certain extent. They'd be better than the Bulldogs, that's for sure. But I think that where they're based is up to the Kiwis. They will work that out, the best place to base them themselves. I would hope that place has a nice rectangular stadium that fans can go to and know that they're going to enjoy a good game of football, and it's a nice place to watch a game of footy.
They only have rectangular stadiums.
Hey?
They only have rectangular stadiums, don't they?
Well, Eden Park isn't a perfect rectangle, but they're not going to have the second team in Auckland anyway. But I like that indoor stadium they've got. You know, the one that's looks like a greenhouse?
Yeah, I know the one.
Yeah, and it always seems like whenever there's a game, an NRL game played there, it's not a bad atmosphere and just seems like a nice environment to watch a game at. But I don't know that it's a big enough media centre for a brand new club to be based at. But
well, hang on, I've got games at Leichhardt.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And Flanders wants more of that. Is there an empty cow paddock somewhere in the middle of New Zealand that we can just put a few chairs on?
A few chairs and exactly 2 portable toilets.
Exactly. You don't need any more than that.
Nah, that seems fine.
Bit of electricity running there, so you can put some lights up and a few microphones.
At the very least, like maybe have a generator and a bunch of extension cords.
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
Have around everywhere. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got your suburban ground then. Fantastic. Yeah. It's got to have a hill too.
Yeah. And maybe a tree overhanging it.
Oh, tree. I mean, you know what? They should put a tree actually on the field.
Isn't there a cricket ground like that in England?
Oh, there probably is.
I'm almost certain there's a cricket ground where there's a tree planted in the field, and
wouldn't be surprised if there's a sports ground somewhere in England that's got a fucking Tesco in the middle of it.
Leave Central Park out of this. I think that's competitiveness between the Warriors and the second team. I kind of think they need it. I think that they've.
I'm in agreement that they need it. I just don't want it to be something that will cannibalise one team and risk losing it. I think if we're going to go that way, then we want to make sure that both teams survive and are successful. I don't want to see one dominate the other and force the other one to die.
Yeah.
That's all I'm after.
Yeah. And I don't want it playing out of the Cake Tin in Wellington. Whenever I see a game played there, it's like just the most soulless shit I've ever seen.
How can you respect a ground that's called the Cake Tin?
Exactly. What could you call something that's round like that's better than the Cake Tin, like more menacing?
More menacing? The toilet lid?
The serrated cock ring. That would scare people.
You'd definitely stay seated.
Where would someone find something like that? Let me Google it. No. So that brings up a lot of ideas. Let's push this. Let's hope someone's listening. What would you call a team that played at the serrated cock ring?
Well, the Roosters would be perfect, wouldn't it?
Roosters. Oh shit. The Roosters.
That would be perfect.
It really would be, hey. Damn.
The Devils. Red Devils.
The Dirty Reds?
Oh. That goes somewhere else.
Yeah. Man. Let's move on.
Speaking of other teams,
Yes.
I did also see the NRL's decided they're going to introduce 2 new NRL women's teams next year.
Yeah.
And they also said that they think that the women's team based in New Zealand could be under threat.
Yeah, which would be a disgrace.
Yeah, I mean,
disgrace.
They should not be looking at bringing in. I want to preface this first by saying we need to have more women's teams.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to see more women's teams come in if it means other teams are getting arseholed.
Yes.
So, why bring in 2 teams if one has to die? Why not bring in one team and save the other one?
Yes, I agree.
That way you get both good results.
And it's obviously a cost-cutting thing. Like, the New Zealand women's rugby league team is, very important to the game. I don't understand why you would make it a more difficult pathway for, women's players in New Zealand to be professional players at some level, or semi-professional, I guess. As for who they'd bring in, I think that the Penrith Panthers would be not doing their job for rugby league if they do not get one of the licenses. I think to be a complete club, and we've seen how strong the Panthers are across their grades this year especially, if they don't go after one of those licenses hard, they're not doing their job. And I'd be really disappointed in the club. And they don't even have to be called the Penrith Panthers. Call them Western Sydney something. It doesn't matter what you call them. But one of those teams should be run by the Panthers, in my opinion. And that because we don't really have a team for Western Sydney. And the other thing is, I think the other team should be a Canberra-based team or a Melbourne team. It should be a regional team.
Yeah, I've got the feeling that they're going to go with the safe option and probably stick with one in Sydney, one in Brisbane. And given they've already got one in Brisbane, they might look at Gold Coast or something.
Yeah.
The historian in me wants them to put a team at Cronulla, given that the Cronulla women's team were very, very strong when it came to actually setting up the NRLW. And to me, it seemed like an absolute travesty that they didn't get a team first up. So I'd like to see them get rewarded for their hard work in those early days of setting up the NRLW to get a team now. I don't know. I don't know what else they do. I'd like to see the women have a strong say in how their game is run and not just be left up to the NRL.
Yeah.
Because the NRL, they have had a tendency to make a few weird decisions over time, especially with teams and rules and, stuff. So I think if the women get together and say, we think there should be a team based here, I think that would be something that should be very strongly listened to and taken on board.
100%. And I think the interesting thing about the women's competition is that, some of the teams have really, they've seemed more natural than others, if that makes sense. Yes. It seems to have worked more organically than other teams. I think that needs to be looked at. And look, I've said for a long time, I would love the women's comp to be run by women, for women, by women. I think it's a shame that it is under the NRL umbrella, because I think it just should be for the women themselves. And I don't think these teams need to be connected to NRL clubs. I understand it helps financially and all that, but, I just think it's a shame to sort of brush aside what women's rugby league has been. It's not like it just started when the NRLW started. It's been around a long time before that. And I think that those traditions should have been, played forward rather than it just be, let's slap an NRL team's badge on this.
I mean, are you suggesting that maybe we should have had a team that was just called Sydney, which we've already got, and another one from North Sydney?
I would have been happy if they had said we've got, the old idea of a Sydney team from North, South, East and West.
Yep.
And then it's one team per city. If they'd have done that, I'd have been like, wow, that's a fantastic start and a great idea.
Yeah, I'm not too opposed to that either.
Yeah.
But we'll see what they do. I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if they add in 2 teams affiliated with current NRL sides, and they'd be both based in Sydney.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if
They'll go the safe bet.
Yeah, they'll say we're expanding the competition, and you can drive to the expansion teams within 15 minutes of each other.
Or walk.
Yeah,
You can walk there.
Like the good old days.
The good old
walk
days.
to NRL grounds, and it's the best.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and if you didn't live within 15 minutes of your ground, well, fuck you, you don't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just on the talk of the possible expansion of the NRL with the second New Zealand team, there was a pretty funny article that Craig Nuremberg's brought to my attention on Twitter, and it was by a former New Zealand Rugby Union player called Andrew Mertens, and he was basically saying that the NRL should not be looking to expand into New Zealand because of the perilous state of the finances of New Zealand Rugby Union, and the fact that Rugby Union in New Zealand is looking to sell part of its soul, Andrew, to an investment company, and that all of their rugby union teams over there are struggling to turn a profit, and he just doesn't think it's
selling their soul.
Yeah, well, remember rugby union for 100 years used to pretend that it was an amateur game, and then they turned professional, and now it's just they're a bunch of whores. Using your terminology here, not mine. Well, they're looking to private investment basically for the game in New Zealand, and because they're struggling financially, there's only so much money you can suck out of a country that's the size of a nice council area in Sydney. So they've got that problem, and this former rugby union player doesn't want the NRL to come in and take everything over, basically.
Sorry, I'm just getting over selling their soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of thrown me a little bit.
I see what you mean, because they don't have souls, do they?
Well, there is that, and they kind of sold their soul with the whole "we're amateur and no one gets paid" thing that they were completely abusing back about 3 minutes after the game actually started.
Yeah, and then they in 1995 they decided to start paying taxes
and openly paying all their players.
Yes, and there was also
as opposed to just stuffing large wads of money into their boots while they're out on the field.
Yes, and there was also that time they collaborated with Nazis. There was that.
Yeah, that's I mean, as some rugby union fans have told me, that was just a one-off. I'm going, well, yes, because there's only been one Nazi party that tried to rule the world.
Yeah, it's like, if your one-off is collaborating with Nazis, I don't think you just get to go, one-off.
You can't really water that down or just throw it away. It's just something that never really happened. You did delete another sport because you didn't like the fact they were better than you in the space of 3 years.
And there was also that time when they toured South Africa during apartheid and named a number of Maori players honorary whites. That was, a little bit selling your soul there as well. If anyone wants to read up that disgraceful event, feel free to. Fucking terrible.
Yeah. So, selling souls. Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's possible that, souls are like lives for cats and everyone gets 9 of them. Possibly. Although they've probably still got rid of those as well. Maybe they're like 2 cats. 3 cats? How many cats can you be, souls-wise?
How many cats would they need? They would need more cats than Buzz Rothfield owns. I feel like Buzz Rothfield owns a lot of cats, don't you?
You reckon he's a cat man?
Yeah.
I don't know. So you've got to be home and somewhat functioning to be able to keep the animal alive.
You've got to be functioning. That's pretty funny, actually. Anyway, we should go on another tack before we get into any more trouble.
Yeah.
So is there any more news? That's all the news that really stood out for me that I could find this week.
The Tigers won.
Yeah. Were you happy about that?
Surprised.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think the thing that's most surprising is the fact that they kept the team to less than 300 points.
Mm-hmm.
Maguire kept going on about how, they managed the ebbs and flows a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to a lot of the coaches' comments, and a lot of the losing coaches are talking about how the best teams are able to manage momentum and control the pace and dictate the way the game runs a lot better than the lower teams.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, no, doesn't kind of work that way. The better teams just don't fuck up as much at very, very costly times, and they've got much better defence.
Yeah.
Because the rules themselves have been changed and fucked around with so much that it's attack-oriented football. That's what it's creating. So the teams that are most successful are the teams who have got the best defence, not the best attack.
Yeah.
And I don't know why a lot of people haven't realised that yet. Like, the reason why Penrith did so well last year and got to the grand final and only lost one game up until that point was the fact that their defence was superb. And when you look back over the last decade or so, the teams with the best defence are getting into the grand finals.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not. But the teams with the best attack are not always necessarily making it to the grand finals. That hasn't changed. That's the only aspect of the game that hasn't changed. And right now, I mean, as much as it was good that the Tigers had a win, they are, after 8 games, sporting a points differential of minus 100 odd or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. I think the crazy thing too is the Sharks are only one place ahead of them, and their points differential is minus 18.
Yeah, that's crazy. How about the Sharks falling off a cliff since they got rid of Morris?
Since they ripped the soul out of the club?
Yeah, it's
that's
just
what they
crazy.
did.
It's just crazy that I don't think I've ever seen a situation where a club has been going not too bad, and then they've made a coaching change, and it's just that's it. Like, they spiked their entire season. Yeah. It's really strange.
That's the thing. Like, so many of their players are playing for a contract next year, but the one player who isn't, who had an absolutely disgraceful game on the weekend, was Chad Townsend.
Oh,
God, man!
If
if I'm the Sharks right now, I'd dump him. I say, you know what? You're not here next year. You're not in our plans anymore. We're obviously not playing good enough. You can just play for Newtown for the rest of the year. We're going to start bringing through our junior halves, and we're going to give them game time so they're ready to go next year. That's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, and I've got no problem with that. Like, remember Wayne Bennett did that a number of years ago. I can't remember the play. Was it Justin Hodges he did that with?
I think so.
He signed for the Sydney Roosters and he dropped him. And it was basically along the lines of, like, why would I spend my time developing him as a player? And it was a different time for rugby league. Now I think it's much more accepted. Like, when the Broncos dropped Dearden after he signed with the North Queensland Cowboys, I was like, yeah, I understand that. I think that's a good move. But yeah, I agree with you. I would drop Townsend, and I guess that's the thing. Like, Josh Hannay is their coach at the moment, their caretaker coach until Fitzgibbon comes in next year. Does he get asked by Fitzgibbon to, develop the young halves that they've got there and drop Townsend? Or does he not get those instructions? Like, it's such a weird situation, and one that the Sharks board has put the club in. It's terrible.
Speaking of terrible, another big issue that the Sharks have got is the fact that Wade Graham came back from his second HIA, second concussion for the year, and then copped another one.
Yeah.
I don't know, if I was the Sharks, given the way the season's looking right now, I'd be giving Wade a month or two off and just say, you know what, get your head right. We'll do every test we can under the sun to make sure you're perfectly fine. And if we're not convinced, you need to have a chat about what you do with the rest of your career, because he's not. I don't think he's 30 yet. I think he's 29. Yeah,
it's scary when a player comes back from a head knock and they get one immediately. I agree with you, especially with the way this season's going. Like, give him some time on the sideline and let him get right.
Yeah, because they gave him 2 weeks leading up to this game, and thankfully, and this is the worst use of the word thankfully, it wasn't a minor bump that caused the knockout. He had a pretty heavy head clash with Kamikamitha, I think it was.
Yeah.
And he was running hard, and it was front of head onto his chin. And they both went down. So it was a pretty heavy knock. And Wade apparently passed his HIA, but the coach just said, there's no point bringing you back on. You know, there's like 30 minutes left. The game's gone. What's the point? So thankfully, that's in his favour. But the way the Sharks got at the moment, I wouldn't be risking bringing him back early. I know the season's not over yet, but at the same time, the Sharks do have quite a bunch of talented forwards that need a bit of game time. Give them a few games now.
Yeah, I agree. Just thinking about the Fergo and the Freak tipping comp on tipping.nrl.com, which is the official NRL website's tipping competition. Having a look at our top 10 at the moment, James Cunningham is leading the way with 49 total tips right. Peter Rasher is second with Marksman Plays. Andrew Marjalek, or Marjalet as you like to call him.
Marjalet.
Yeah, he's next.
I'm sure he's French.
Sarah Miller is in 5th place. She, I think she dropped a tip this week. Yeah, she only got 5 out of 8 right this week. So she dropped back a little bit. Followed by the glorious League Freak in 6th spot. And then Reagan Seaton, my former housemate. And then Nadine Childers is there. Yeah.
Can I just ask, have I gone further backwards, and how far am I away from the bottom now?
You are. Let me look down the list. Oh, man. Come on, Andrew. Oh, where are you? You're down in 23rd. Holy shit. Okay, so you've got 41 tips, right? And the top person has 49.
Okay.
So...
catchable.
Yeah. Over the course of a season, I would say catchable for sure.
Yeah. I'm not saying that with any form of positivity, because I know they're not catchable now. But it still sounds reasonable at this stage. So how many tipsters do we have all up?
We have 38 total tipsters.
Okay, so I haven't disgraced myself too much yet. I've still got time to go to do that.
Yeah, you're still like, you're still, I mean, 23rd, yeah. It's not like you look at the bottom and you see your name.
Yeah.
Not yet. But
I'm working on it.
So, top one has 49, and the 10th place one has 46. So, at the top, even 11th place has 46. So, the people at the top of the competition, they're not that far ahead of each other. It's all very even.
Yeah, it's not too bad. We've got a pretty good competition there.
Yeah,
how are we going over at the Who Tipped? Is it Who Tipped Who? Whatever it is.
Who Tipped What?
That's the one.
WhoTippedWhat.com. Okay, let's have a look. I think I might have dropped.
I somehow made it into an AC/DC themed thing.
What do you mean?
Well, you know, they had a song I think called Who Made Who. I was just turning it into Who Tipped Who.
Okay. So it looks like I am back into equal second place with a bunch of people. And let's see where you are, which means our Fergo and the Free competition on tipping.nrl.com overall does better than the people that tip on this comp.
And they're experts.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for you. Hang on.
Keep scrolling down.
Jesus, man.
Bit further.
You're in
Bit further.
You're in 34th place.
Out of how many?
56. Oh, no, people. 54. So
middle of the road.
So the worst tippers in this competition, and keep in mind there's maybe some weeks where they didn't get the tips from these people or whatever. So Hannah Hollis is last. Brent Reed is second last. Darcy McDonald, who lovely guest come on the podcast a few weeks ago, she's third last. Phil Rothfield, Dean Ritchie.
Phil and Dean put the tips in every week.
Do they?
I'm sure they do. I'm saying they do.
NRL economist, Jimmy Smith, Michael Shamus, Nick Tajeski, but I think he's missed a couple of weeks because this one isn't filled out.
He had the same thing last year. He didn't put his tips in there very often.
Okay. Errol, reading the play, David Riccio, Willie Mason, his tips aren't in this week. Albie, who runs the website, and then it's you.
Well, hey.
So, yeah.
David Riccio was the bloke who put out yet another article today about all the players the West Tigers left.
Oh, really?
Let go, yeah. Because every single Daily Telegraph journal has to run that article. It's part of their KPIs. They've got to do it at least once every year. So they figured Tigers are going, shit, let's keep punching them out now while people are reading it.
You know,
I think it got done a week or so ago.
Yeah, not very long ago.
Yeah, so he's gone, let's just do another one.
So going by this one, the game that really tripped out some people was the Warriors versus Cowboys game, which I'm surprised anyone would tip the Cowboys over the Warriors. The Warriors are playing not too bad. And then almost everyone, there was very few people tipped the Tigers. So that could have been the other game that tripped people up, but didn't. Greg Alexander tipped the Raiders over South Sydney. How about that?
Ballsy.
Come on, Brandy. What are you doing?
Very ballsy.
Yeah, there was only a few people that did that. I mean, if I went down and you tipped them, I'd fucking laugh. No, you tipped the South as well. You had a really good week. Did you get a perfect week? No. You didn't tip the Broncos. Oh, and you
didn't get the Broncos, and I picked the Cowboys as well. Because, see, I got to the point now where I realised I've got to pick at least one or two roughies every week.
Yeah, I get that.
I try and go with the Tigers, usually one of the roughies.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one I try and pick a game where it's two teams that are reasonably close on the ladder. I try to go against the favourite.
Yeah.
According to the bookies. There you go. I went up one spot on the ranking.
Yeah, that's handy. See, the only reason I like to be near the top of this one is because I know that there are people that it 100% will piss off that I'm better at them than this. That's the only reason I enjoy this one.
Yeah, 2 wins off top spot here.
2 wins? Yeah, 2 wins, yeah. I'll get there. I come home strong. Also, I'm very good at tipping near the end of the year.
Well, you did pick the Dragons. I'm surprised, mate, that you picked a Matthew Elliott somewhat coach side.
Yes.
That'll learn you.
Yeah, that will. We'll make mistakes. But I'll take again. Matthew Elliott over Brian McDermott any day as a coach.
There you go.
Oh, by the way, Greg Inglis made his debut for the Wire over there in Super League. Scored a try on debut. I didn't see much of him because he really only touched the ball once that I saw in the highlights. Watching the highlights of the game, fucking hell, the defence is bad.
Yeah, they look set to be adopting a bunch of the current NRL rules too. I saw that the International Rugby League announced that the set restarts were going to be introduced internationally this year as well.
Yeah.
So I don't like that rule too much. I think that's going to hurt international footy a bit.
I agree. We're going to see some blowout score lines from that.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine an Australian team with 8 tackles to use even in a set?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Or even if you're looking at Papua New Guinea or someone like that, and if they were taking on, Malta or even France, it could get messy.
I'm going to ask you a question. If there was, in the World Cup, if there was one team you could see where they play a game and they got a ridiculous amount of six-again rules that was outrageously over the top, who would that team be that receives that?
I got two teams.
Okay.
I just mentioned them, France and Papua New Guinea.
Oh, there you go.
I'd love to see Papua New Guinea because they just play with so much energy. And France because they do tend to have a tendency to throw the ball around a bit.
I think we are going to see a screw job on a team where England gets a ridiculous amount of six-again calls. It'll happen against someone like Fiji or something, where it just so happens that the home team, they get all these six-again calls for no reason. I'm not saying that there's anything going on, but when it happens, I'm definitely going to tweet about it. I'm
not sure it's going to be enough, though. I'm not seeing enough at the moment and I've only seen a little bit of the English Super League games, but I'm not seeing enough from that, of their elite players over there who are eligible to play for Great Britain or England, whoever they choose to come and bring over. I'm not seeing enough from them at the moment to suggest that they're going to be immensely competitive. I don't think they've improved enough from when they came over here and got belted by everyone.
Apparently Sam Walker was born in England, I guess when his dad was over there playing in Super League. They should do everything they can to get him in an England jersey because they don't have any halves otherwise.
They've probably already had that conversation with him.
And hopefully Sam Walker said, go away.
Yeah, I want to play for, I'd rather not play international football than play international football and lose all the time.
Who's in their group? Who's in their group?
I've not had a look. I think they've got a reasonably nice group, really.
See, I thought it was a bad group for them. RLWC groups.
Let's see.
It's Rugby League World Cup.
Group A. Oh yeah, they've got a bad group. They've got Australia, New Zealand, and they've got Samoa, France, and Greece.
See, they should beat Greece.
They'll beat Greece and France, but they'll struggle against Samoa.
I think the thing I'm thinking is when they go in through to the next round, and I feel like the way I worked it out is maybe they'd have to play the second team from Group B or something like that, which I think is going to be Fiji.
They're Group A. So Group A winner plays the runner-up of Group D.
Group D.
The runner-up in Group D is going to be one of Tonga, Papua New Guinea, Wales, or Cook Islands.
So it'll be Tonga or PNG.
Yeah.
Like the Cook Islands punch above their weight, but they're going to find it. And Wales, fucking Wales, who gives a shit? The Group C, New Zealand, and you would think Lebanon, but we'll see. Jamaica might prove an upset there. It's going to be Australia and Fiji from Group B, and it's going to be Samoa and probably England, yeah.
Depends on who's available for Lebanon. I wouldn't be surprised if Ireland do reasonably well in that group because, there's an awful lot of players who are eligible for Ireland around the world.
Oh, it's like St. Patrick's Day where every fucking person that's ever met an Irish person, they say they're Irish.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it's New Zealand and Ireland at the top of that group there. But I'd put Lebanon. I'd suggest if Lebanon is largely an Australian-based team, they should be able to get the second spot there.
I just have a feeling that Jamaica might just pull an upset, and I think that they'll beat Ireland. I know it's a big call. I know it's a big call, but I just have a feeling about it.
They're playing at the home ground of Headingley, so that's something in their favour for that game.
I just want to see England have to play like. You know what? Here's what I'm thinking. Who does the second place team in Group A play?
Group A runner-up plays the Group D winner, so they'll play Tonga or Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because I think Samoa can beat England, and like they'd be out straight away. If doesn't matter who they play, Tonga or PNG, they're not beating those teams.
No. So that would suggest that you would much rather be the Group A winner than the Group A runner-up. Because if you're the Group A runner-up, you're most likely to play against Tonga.
Yeah.
In the first week. Either way, you've got to play Tonga in the first or second week of the finals.
Yeah, and you're screwed. Like if Australia was playing Tonga in the first week of the finals, I'd be like, oh, jeez.
So what it does mean, though,
yeah,
because of the way the final system is set up, I think Australia is in the top half of the finals draw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are, which means we're not going to see Australia playing England in the final. I don't think we will.
See, I'd say I think that England's going to lose their first game in the finals anyway.
That's what I mean. Like, England's going to have to play Tonga or Papua New Guinea, and I don't think they'll get through both of them, let alone one of them.
The Kiwis. So I guess the Kiwis are going to play Fiji, and Australia will play. If you went by, just ranking Lebanon.
Yeah. So I dare say it's very high probability that the final could be between Australia and Tonga.
Yeah, that's what I felt like the final was going to be, hey?
Yeah. And that's not a given for either side.
No, not at all.
It's about time we had a World Cup final that wasn't a bloody foregone conclusion before the competition started.
Yeah, and look, as an Australian, I would have zero problem with, number one, everyone going for Tonga that was an Australian. Number two, if Tonga wins the World Cup, I mean, what an amazing thing for rugby league that would be.
Absolutely.
One of the most memorable games ever was that Tonga beaten Australia, straight up. No, no asterisks next to that one.
Yeah, no excuses, no bullshit.
I would like to see Fiji do well in this World Cup too, because at times they've done all right, but then they've got to the final, the semi-finals and they've been really disappointing. I'm hoping that they do better this time around. And I was just thinking about it on the weekend when I was watching Kickout playing. Kickout didn't have a great game, but I was just thinking, like, man, what would an England team do to shut down a Kickout? Like, good luck.
Yeah, I don't know what they do there. It's crazy. So yeah, that's something to look forward to at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so we will be.
Yeah, I reckon that's the end of the podcast, eh?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Make sure you check us out on Instagram and Twitter at FergoFreakPod. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, MySpace. So check us out on all of those. You check us out on our website, Freaky.
Yes, it is fergonfreak.com. Go to the contact section and leave us an email through the contact section of the website.
Yeah, and we've got another episode coming up soon where we will read out those emails and answer your questions, answer your queries, all that sort of gear.
Mm-hmm.
So bring those in. Probably going to have an Ask Kenty sometimes in the next few weeks or so.
Yeah, let's do an Ask Kenty definitely in the next 2 weeks, and we'll read out the emails as well.
Sounds good.
Give everyone their say.
Yeah, get the voice out there.
Yeah.
And then we've got to put this into obligatory state of origin. You can put that in the comments because everyone's talking about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had to mention that was it. We don't have to go any further than that. It's just in there.
Thank God.
We've got that in. You can do hashtags and shit for Origin all over the place. People wonder what the fuck's going on. What are you talking about electricity property businesses for? I don't get it. My gas bill paid. There you go. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, to our 300th episode. And we'll catch you all next time.